This is DW News Africa. Coming up on the program, how can Namibia and Germany best do business under the shadow of German genocide? Namibian President Nangola Mbumba has been in Germany for wide-ranging talks with the government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz. But 120 years ago, German troops began the mass murder of two Namibian nations, the Herero and the Nama. Germany has admitted that was genocide and it wants to atone. But Berlin also wants to do business and invest in a green hydrogen project in Namibia. Activists say the harbor for the deal will destroy the graves of their ancestors, once killed by the Germans.
Who's behind these developments? Germany, the one that committed these crimes, is apparently the one whose needs now are to be produced on the bones of our people.
I'm Michael Oku. Welcome to DW News Africa. Namibian President Nangola Mbumba has been visiting Germany, where he attended the Hamburg Sustainability Conference and held talks with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The two leaders discussed the severe drought devastating southern Africa, climate change, and their country's plans to cooperate on the hydrogen project, which aims to produce 2 million tons of green ammonia every year, potentially abating 3 million tons of CO2 emissions. But relations between the two countries are still overshadowed by Germany's brutal history in President Mbumba's home country. On October 2nd, 120 years ago, the commander of Imperial German troops, General Lothar von Trotha, issued an extermination order on the Nama and the Herero people. Back in 1904, German troops controlled much of modern-day Namibia as a colony it called German Southwest Africa. Africans resisted the theft of their lands, so the German occupiers began a campaign of systematic slaughter. Here's an excerpt from that extermination order. The Hereros are no longer German subjects. Within the German borders, every Herero, with or without a gun, with or without cattle, will be shot. I will no longer accept women and children. I will drive them back to their people, or I will have them shot. That order was carried out with brutal thoroughness. The German forces murdered resistance forces and civilians and drove many more into the desert, where they had neither food nor water. It's estimated that 65,000 Herero and 10,000 Nama died. The massacre, one of the first genocides of the 20th century. And it was only in 2021 that the governments of Germany and Namibia reached a reconciliation agreement, a decision that sparked protests and heated debate in Namibia's parliament, with opposition parties rejecting the deal over the way reparations would be paid. Germany officially recognized the killings as genocide and agreed to provide 1.1 billion euros over 30 years for development projects in Namibia. Descendants of survivors also reject the bilateral agreement between Berlin and Windhoek because they weren't included in the talks. Many of them are landless to this day, while descendants of German colonialists still farm the land. In a wide-ranging interview with DW, Namibian President Nangola Mbumba addressed the controversy and the issue of reparations.
When you do something wrong and you recognize that you have done something wrong, what do? You make sure that you stretch your hand to the person you have wronged. If you are a strong person of a goodwill, you apologize. And you facilitate to remove the wrongs that have been done. And that's what we have been negotiating. First, we have to talk to the German to agree that what was done is genocide. It took time, but now on both sides we agree that it is genocide that was done. Then the issue of the apology, they never doubted that. They said they are ready to apologize. Okay? What has been is, how do you compensate life lost? Lives lost not only in the fighting, but in the concentration camps. Not only in the concentration camp, removing all their land and all their cows and other properties. To weigh that, what was lost and what could be done now, has been quite a challenge. But we think with goodwill, we can find a formula, not a perfect one, but at least a formula to indicate that the wrong had been recognized and atonement or reparation has been done. And it can also be done in one year. It has to be done step by step so that the community feel vindicated, that their demand for reparation, their demand for the wrong that have been done. Some of the process we are going to do is that when we have agreed, the majority of the funds will be used to buy back some of the farms so that the people who lost the land will get their land.
As we mentioned earlier, one of the responses to climate change has been the development of green hydrogen projects like the Hyphen project Namibia is developing with the Germans. Again, here's President Mbumba.
I was talking to the Chancellor of Germany right now. He's saying they are committed to buy the green hydrogen or ammonia from us, a combination of green hydrogen and ammonia from us. It is their companies that are coming there to produce this because they have the technology, they have the know-how, they have the finances, and they have the market in their own country. Even for the first time, we're having our engineers and architects and technical people coming to German universities to learn how to handle those industries. And we are proud of that.
But the dark crimes of Namibia's colonial past have cast a pall over this drive for sustainable development. Earlier this year, Namibian authorities were urged to freeze plans to extend a port on the Shark Island Peninsula to facilitate green hydrogen production, a place where unmarked graves and artifacts relating to the Herero and Nama genocide have recently been uncovered. The discovery was part of research carried out by the nonprofit agencies Forensic Architecture and Forensis, who have also investigated evidence of colonial atrocities up the coast at Swakopmund. Details of their findings are laid out in documentaries put together by researchers. New findings from Forensic Architecture shed more light on what happened in Swakopmund. Here's an excerpt from their most recent investigation, The Infrastructure of Genocide.
You know, the old people are making a fire, and then the kids are sitting around the fire, and then they tell you oral history. I'm very much fortunate that my great-grandmother personally told me was around 10 years old. I could understand what she was trying to tell us, you know, how she survived. I'm still traumatized what she told me, you know, up to now it's still haunting me.
Swakopmund, a port town founded in 1892, is situated where the Swakop River cuts through the Namib Desert before pouring into the sea. Its name comes from the Nama and Damara word Swakop, meaning the movement of sediment and detritus. Swakopmund soon became a site of systematic forced labor imposed by German perpetrators on the Ova Herero and Nama peoples. Such images of prisoners were taken throughout the town, highlighting that forced labor was widespread despite the absence of any clear demarcation. But even faced with photographic evidence, many denialists still contest that it took place. These images, which once served as propaganda, are now evidence of the atrocities committed by those who took them.
The main concentration camp at the coast, where over Herero captives, or prisoners if you wish, were taken from the inner land onto the coast to Swakopmund. We know that some attempted to escape and they were pursued and killed, or either they were followed and found dead because they had not eaten for days.
At the edge of Swakopmund, Where the town meets the desert lies a vast expanse of unmarked graves, where thousands of genocide victims are buried.
It is a genocide cemetery. This is part of what the German government has committed. And this is part of our case, that we have this cemetery erected here. So to us, this is a special place.
Over the course of this program, we've seen Germany's brutal history in Namibia and the two countries' attempts to come to terms with it in the present. But now we'd like to focus even further on the communities at the center of it all, the Herero and Nama peoples, with Nandi Metheingo, spokesperson for the Over Herero Genocide Foundation and Over Herero Traditional Authority. Nandi Metheingo, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this. The 2021 agreement between Germany and Namibia has been called a reconciliation agreement by some. What would you and the community call it?
Well, for us, that agreement is really a betrayal of our struggle and our cause. It is a document that was produced without our participation. It is a document that was produced by those who deliberately sought to exclude us from a process that is about us. And so it is a document that we reject. We reject in its totality. It is meaningless to us because it does not offer us justice. And justice is really the precondition before you talk of reconciliation and many other things. It begins with justice. And that document gives us none of that.
You say specifically that you were excluded from these discussions. How do you believe the talks should have been conducted differently?
Well, this is a struggle that Over Herero people and the Nama counterparts, we have led the struggle for the last 120 years ourselves. And so the modern state of Namibia only came into the process very recently. And that again is also as a function of a process that we also championed in the Namibian parliamentary system that actually led to the adoption of what is called the 2006 genocide motion of the Namibian parliament. And in that motion, actually, a process was already envisaged. There is already a framework, that was outlined in that process where the two communities themselves, just like our brothers and sisters from the Jewish community, were able to speak for themselves. In that framework too, we as Over Herero and Nama people who've been genocided, we were supposed to have a seat at the table to articulate our own material claims. And the Namibian government, really as the government that inherited the territory where the crime took place, was supposed to be there as a facilitator. But Over Herero people themselves, Namas, and indeed as we come together from the different, because as a consequence of the genocide, Over Herero and Nama people today are transnational. We don't only live in one space, in one jurisdiction. There are communities in Botswana, in South Africa, and elsewhere. All of these groups, just like the Jews came together in the Conference of Claims that actually comprised about 23 Jewish committees, we were supposed to come together in a similar fashion and articulate our own interests.
Essentially, what you're saying is it is written into law that you have a seat at the table, and that was not simply the case. Let me ask you this. I mean, there are people who would arrive to this for the first time, who might not be hearing about your case and are hearing about it for the first time. I think it's safe to say most people might find the numbers striking. 1.1 billion euros. That's what Berlin would send to Windhoek for reconstruction and development over the next 3 decades. That's money that would unequivocally change lives for the better, no?
Well, it all depends on where the money goes. If you are not part of the process, that already tells you would also not be part of whatever comes out of that process. But let's also put this into context. 1.1 billion euros, yes, over 30 years. But how much of my society was actually destroyed? We are talking about 80% of a nation state that was wiped out. And these were two nation states. You see, we tend to want to talk about our nations as tribes in the modern era, but these were sovereign nation states. That's what Ovaherero and Namas were in 1904. 80% of my people were wiped out. Of the Namas, 50% were wiped out. Our land, all of it, our wealth, everything was taken. So that's the context we have to put this into this number that we're talking about. And how much is even given to wars, you know? So the question really is, if you are excluded in the process, whatever that comes out of that process naturally would not even reach you, because there is a deliberate reason why you are excluded. Because the Namibian government, the Namibian government, and in fact, we see this not as part of any reparation, package. It's not even talked about in that agreement. It talks about development, which Germany, development aid is what Germany gives to a number of countries around the world. So that package, we see it as a development aid package to Namibia that really has nothing to do with us. Of course, if the money comes to Namibia, we are citizens, just like any other citizen. We will benefit because as citizens, we too are entitled to development. But it is not part of a penalty that one must pay if you commit a crime, because genocide is a crime, and it is a crime for which Germany must pay to those, against whom it committed that crime. And
I hear you. I hear you, sir. I hear you, sir, and I'm sure that our viewers hear you and your passion as well. We heard President Mbamba pledge that money and land would be dedicated to Herero and Nama communities. Isn't that recompense?
Well, we don't believe what President Mbamba says. For a week, I'm actually in Windhoek now, and I've just arrived from Swakopmund, which is a coastal town, where thousands of our people were actually thrown into concentration camps, where they perished, still lying in unmarked graves. Over Herero people met there for a week. We narrated, what actually happened to us during the genocide campaign. But we also, for the last 2 days of the week, we articulated what our material claims are. We then decided at the tail end of that process that we needed to take these demands to the Namibian government as the facilitator. That's the role that was envisaged for them in the process. But they were not there. They actually declined to see us, to listen to us, so that we can tell them what we feel justice to us entails. So we don't believe anything that they say. They have no mandate to negotiate for us. And as far as we are concerned, Mbamba is just a caretaker president. And as a people, we are actually looking beyond, his time in public service already, because we see him as the man who presided over this sellout deal when he was vice president.
I have a feeling.
Because we understand that's where...
I have a feeling I understand how you're going to answer my next question, but as I understand it, one of the community's critical problems with the agreement is the fact that the money is paid to the government and not to the Nama, I should say, and Herero people directly. Do you not trust the government of Namibia?
Well, it is our government. It is a government that we elected, but it is a government that has never come to us to ask for a mandate to speak to these issues that we are talking about. That's naturally what should happen in a democracy. You go to the people, you have your political program, and you ask the people for a mandate on specific questions, that you want to lead them on. This question of the genocide does not feature anywhere in the program of the governing majority SWAPO. It has never featured. So it has never been important to them. And the sellout agreement, this agreement that they have negotiated apparently over the last 8 or so years, it already tells you that this is not a government that we should trust with, negotiating anything for us. Because anyway, this is not the first time. There was another initiative called the German Special Initiative, that was also a package that the Germans gave to Namibia. None of that reached our communities. So, genocide is a crime that targets specific people. And we are saying as a people, we are perfectly capable of speaking for ourselves. And that is what the motion that was actually passed by our parliament actually said. And that is where we are in court, saying our rights to participate in that process have actually been violated. That is why 7 specialized UN rapporteurs actually, critiqued the 2 governments for having violated our rights, to be the ones to spell out what justice to us entails. And so, it's not a question of trusting who and who. It's a question of us asserting our rights. And we have the right to speak for ourselves. We have the right to be the one in charge of our destiny.
I want to talk about Shark Island for a moment, sir. Just moments earlier, we heard about plans to expand the port for green hydrogen production. Given the island's history, what's your position on that?
Again, it's another indicator of why this is not a government that we should trust to speak for us. Because it's not only this latest development where they want to expand the port for this so-called development, which we anyway see just as German energy needs that is to be produced on our land. But Shark Island, the site of some of the most grotesque of crimes, the heinous crimes that were committed on that space. Today it remains a recreational facility administered by a government company. It is a place where tourists go and party, have fun on that space. So that is desecrating, the memories of those who died there. But again, today they would want to go further with that desecration by expanding it and making it a port and all kinds of things. Is
this, sir, as some have argued, just a repetition of colonialism?
It looks like it. It looks like it because who's behind these developments? Germany, the one that committed these crimes, is apparently the one whose needs now are to be produced on the bones of our people. And the only sign that sits on that island to memorialize them, to remember those who perished on that island, is something that we had to put up ourselves. We had to find friends in our network to support us to erect a monument there. The Namibian government has not put up anything there. All it does is draw money from these tourists who goes and have fun there. The German government today wants that port actually expanded and turned into a production line for its energy needs. So this is what colonialism is in the modern era.
If the Nama and Herero people could decide what happens next, what would it be? In other words, what exactly do the people want?
Well, what the people want is to have, number one, is to speak for themselves. Because, look, truth be told, President Bumba is not a Herero, nor is he a Nama. He might have read about our history. He might have met people who knows about this genocide history, but he has not left it. We, the people who were, our parents left it. We were born into societies that were torn asunder by that genocidal campaign. So its impact actually continues. So we live it on a daily basis. We can speak for ourselves. So that is the first thing. So if the German state and its people are serious about, finding some closure to this, the first thing that they have to do is to recognize that there already exists a template, exactly what they did when they addressed the Holocaust, crimes. That same template can be applied to us. We can speak for ourselves. We know what justice to us entails. So if we are to move forward, we need to start afresh. The Namibian framework of our parliament is very clear on how the process should unfold. It's a trilateral process where we are involved, our Namibian government is involved. So we reject the idea of having other people impose themselves on us, expropriate the right to speak for us and exclude us out of that. So that we reject totally.
Our deep thanks to Nandi Mathe Ingo for the Over Herero Foundation and Over Herero Traditional Authority.
Thank you very much for having me.
What issues, if any, will this current reconciliation put to rest? We leave you with these images of the fight by Herero, Nama, and other African activists to keep alive the memory of those who died at the hands of colonialists. See you next time, and bye for now.